everyone in the room and to everyone at home or in the office, wherever you may be. And thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to switch my glasses because with old age, it's always difficult to know what works and what you can and can't see. So I want to start off by saying that the contribution that agriculture makes to Australia's gross domestic product has decreased significantly from about 14% in the 1960s to just over 1.9% in 2019 and 20. Nevertheless, agrarianism has remained a key feature of Australia's economy, culture and politics. Australia's history and economy was built on the back of a sheep, and in large part, this enduring agrarian sentiment that we have is the result of pluralism that's achieved by the immense pressure that the lobby groups in the agriculture sector puts upon government. So the place where we are is, it's a fact, and it's widely accepted that Australians are happy to support policies that are aimed at improving the position of participants in the agriculture sector, and agrarian exceptionalism is something that we are all in a position to accept. Now, from a policy perspective, there are two main reasons or rationales for agrarian exceptionalism. The first is that participants within the agriculture sector are market price takers. And secondly, we've got a very variable climate in Australia. So insofar as market prices go, Australian governments have consistently followed a path of deregulation since the 1980s. But when it comes to climate variability, the biggest challenge that primary producers and the government faces is no doubt drought. From 1971, as a principal point of departure, drought was viewed as a natural disaster, which means that most of the programs and tools aimed at helping farmers solve the problem of drought has been focused on disaster relief. Now, this position changed in the 1990s when there was a seismic shift in the way that drought was viewed from a policy perspective. So at a national level, starting in the early 1990s, we have all accepted that drought is a regular and enduring feature of Australia's landscape. And this has meant that over the last 30 years, there's been a shift away from disaster relief and disaster recovery to a policy position where everything that we want to do in the drought space is about financial self-reliance. So at the moment, the suite of programs and policy tools that we have that addresses drought at a farm gate level is staggeringly large. It's staggering to look at the numbers and the programs and the tools that we have available. But these programs and policies cannot change the one thing that we need to change, and that is we need rain, and we need rain often. No one can change that. So the position that we are in at the moment is that there are continuous developments, refinements of our policy tools with regards to drought, and on a continuous basis, we see new policies and programs being developed. This still cannot take away the fact that we will continue to be in drought in many parts of Australia. So this paper investigates one of these policy tools, which is farm management deposits. Now, farm management deposits, as you can see on the first page of the slide, the quote that I have there is one of the government's flagships. I'm still on the first page, yeah. It's one of the government's flagship measures to help farmers prepare for income downturns, including those caused by drought. It's a flagship program. This paper is timely because we are currently in the 5th review of farm management deposits in Australia since it was introduced in 1999. But at this stage, no one really knows whether this is effective in achieving self-reliance. That is the focus of what we want to achieve with our programs. Is it getting us to a point where at a farm gate level, we are seeing self-reliance? So this paper is part of a much wider study that I'm conducting with 2 industry partners in central Western Queensland. These industry partners are Rural Financial Counselling Services North Queensland, and the second industry partner is Rapid, RAPID is the peak local government body in central Western Queensland. So it's with their help that I'm able to present this paper today. So I want to start off by just saying that if you think about the policy intent of farm management deposits, it is a confusing message that we keep getting. I'm not going to report on those confusing messages with regards to the policy perspective of FMDs today, but it's important to recognize that. It's also important to recognize that even though this is the 5th review that we are currently in with farm management deposits, no one of those reviews have been able to tell us whether farm management deposits is actually effective. And the reason for that is unless you know the tax position of a farmer, you know their cash flow position, and you know their financial statement position, it's impossible to see whether those farm management deposits have had any impact. And this is the reason, again, why we are so grateful for the participants in our study who have allowed us to look at their financial statements, their personal and their business tax returns, as well as applications into, for example, concessional loans, as well as farm household allowances. So in terms of what are farm management deposits? Well, if you have cash available, you can deposit it into a specially designated account, a farm management deposit account. If you do that, you get a tax deduction. And then when you draw down on those deposits, you include those into assessable income, which is absolutely unproblematic because all you do is you draw down on your deposits and you simply use those to ensure that you can offset it against tax deductible expenses. So it works in a fabulous way from a theoretical perspective. What I've also done is to list the limitations of the farm management deposit scheme for you on the slide, but I want to highlight 2 of those that is the basis of this paper. The first one is the practical limitation of farm management deposits, which says that you need cash, free cash, from your farm operations before you're able to make a deposit. And then the last limitation is you cannot have farm management deposits that exceeds your taxable income. And we wanted to look at the interplay between the cash that you've got available potentially and the key question, do you have taxable primary production income? So to do that, I wanted to start off by sharing with you the problem that we are faced with when we think about farm management deposits. If we look at ABARE's estimates of farm cash and farm profits, you can see the problem. So if I can actually see with these spectacles, about 74% of farmers across Australia in all of the different industries will have cash, but a much smaller percentage of them, only 34%, potentially have farm profits. Yes, farm profit is not equal to taxable income, but from our study, we can tell you that there is hardly any difference between accounting profit and a taxable income from a primary production perspective. So we see the problem. Many farmers, even in drought conditions, will have cash, but there's a likelihood that very much fewer of them will actually have primary production taxable income, which is what you need to make those deposits into your FMDs. So to investigate this interplay, we have used our pilot study data. So this pilot study is being conducted in all of those areas in Central West Queensland that you can see behind me, and they have been fully drought declared since 2013. The participants that we have in our pilot study are predominantly wool producers, sheep country, that's the area that our pilot study is in. And we also have many of those producers that have a mix between sheep, wool, and beef cattle. We have a smaller percentage of our participants who are only beef cattle producers. Overall, the landscape where our pilot study is conducted is well suited to sheep and wool production. But drought and wild dog predation have really had a significant, a terrible impact on those producers. So what we have in that particular part of Central Western Queensland is a regional economic development tool, which is to bring back the sheep. And overarching in all of the mixed industries and the wool producing participants, they have spent a ton of money on putting up fences to keep the wild dogs out. And overall, government, both at state and federal level, have contributed more than $30 million to put up these fences. So what I want to show you first is whether the participants in our scheme, in our pilot study, have taxable primary production income. And from the data, you can see that none of our participants who only specialize in sheep and wool have primary production taxable income. So even if they had the cash available, it's impossible for them to invest. And in large part, this is because of those very big tax deductions that they have grabbed. So what we wanted to do is to focus on beef cattle producers, to say that if it's more likely that they have primary production taxable income, what are the impediments for them investing? So first up, I wanted to show you that pretty much all of our participants have a whole number of policy schemes and tools that they have access to. They all have a range of those policy tools that help them at a farm gate level. So when we went to calculate their primary production income and their cash that they produced, it was glaringly clear to us how important it was for them to get social support. Over 60% of the participants either get farm household allowances, age pensions, or draw down on their farm management deposits. They need the social support. Nevertheless, when we went to calculate their cash flow position, it was clear to us that they were all in a good position. 66% of them were able to produce cash, and we then went to compare that to their taxable primary production. And it was only in 2 of those family groups over the 15 data sets that we looked at where those producers had cash but did not have primary production taxable income. And we wanted to see what the reason for that was. And in both those sets of families, I can tell you that in the first set where we have in line number 6, yes, they've got cash but no primary production income. It wasn't as a result of instant asset write-offs and their investment in on-farm drought protection measures. It was simply, after our analysis, the fact that this was an unviable operation. Then when I look at the second group in line 12, where we have a lot of cash but no taxable primary production income, I think Barbara would love this, because the main reason why this particular family group is in this position is because they have their operations in a trust and the land is held in a partnership. So we have massive lease costs going from the primary production business in the trust to the partnership itself. And this consistent approach to massive lease costs that starts out at $250,000, then $270,000, then $300,000, and then $320,000 is the main reason why we see those variables going up and down in that particular family. So overall, thinking about the problem for sheep and wool producers, they have a significant problem because of the investment that they have to make in on-farm capital structures to protect themselves from wild dog predation. But if you think about the position of cattle farmers, they are in a much better scenario when we compare their taxable primary production income and their cash positions. So, Brett, in the 2 minutes I've got left, I guess.
Correct, exactly.
Okay. I wanted to talk about the one thing that all of our primary producers have in common. What's the biggest impediment to their cash and their taxable primary production income? And it's the existence of loans. Overall, the Meat and Livestock Association of Australia say that about 6% of production costs go towards interest in most farms across Australia. In our study that looks at the position of primary producers in prolonged drought conditions, the average interest bill is not 6%, it's averaging at 24%. So the reality for producers in long-term drought conditions is whatever cash they have should be used to pay off their debt. And in that sense, farm management deposits can play a key role in that regard, because it's only been over the last 3 years that you can actually invest in a farm management deposit and have it offset your existing loans. So one of the important reform measures that has definitely come from our study is the fact that there should be more emphasis on granting more concessional loans to farmers where they have a breather, because the current scheme says if you take a concessional loan from government, the first 5 years is interest only, and then you start repaying your capital and your interest, which means they get a breather. And in getting that breather, if we can match farm management deposits and use that as an offset against their loans, we are consistently changing the lives of these primary producers. And we can get to a more normalized situation where in these prolonged drought conditions, we won't be at a 24% of your production cost is about your interest, and we can get it down to more manageable and normalized positions. And that's the way we can get out of this for these producers in prolonged drought conditions. And that's my 20 minutes.